thinking about adapting therapy, which we're going to talk a little bit about later on in this afternoon, about adapting therapy and being culturally sensitive. And just checking, are they helpful, actually, the adaptations that you're making? And the best way to find if they're helpful is ask the people that you're delivering them to, and getting them to be involved and co-produce services. So in terms of improving staffing, recruiting a more representative workforce, I think IAPT, when it started, actually, there was a push on this, and I could be wrong, and Caroline's here and you're here. You've been here a bit longer than I have. I think I just get the impression when IAPT first started, there wasn't there? Because I was employed, when I was employed as a PWP, one of the things that was about having a second language, for example, and that was stipulated on the, because it's my first NHS full-time job, I remember the job description. I remember there being something around speaking a second language as a requirement, and I'm not sure now. I think we need to, Ursula's not here, is having a conversation about, we don't want the same conversation that clinical psychology are having now about underrepresentation. They're a bit stuck, to say the least. It's thinking about that. Ensuring the quality of access to training and CPD. So if we're expecting people to work with any sort of groups, we've got the long-term health conditions work going, and actually people are receiving training for that. When it comes to BME kind of training, we're not receiving that additional training, but we're having separate conversations with BABCP, but the fact is people have completed their training. We need to also think about them. Developing staff, BME staff into senior roles, and looking at your senior management team. Is it representative or not? In our trust, we've got like the BME mentoring scheme to encourage people to have the confidence. It's not that they don't have the skills sometimes, it's that they've not been nurtured or guided, or they've had negative experiences, and actually it knocks their confidence. It's just to give them confidence to put themselves forward. Ensure fairness in disciplinary issues, and again we were hoping somebody from the NHS England's Workforce Race Equality team standards team would be here, but maybe that's for another conversation, another event. And understanding your workforce needs and being responsive to those. I know in the past when I've gone and said, can I have supervision on this? You can't have it, you can't have access to it immediately or training, but you're still seeing that person. So you're kind of left holding this level of anxiety, but actually my needs are a little bit more immediate than like maybe 6 or 12 months time. You might have a training plan in place, but actually my needs are a bit more imminent. Why did we involve service users? Why not? Because actually those are the people we enter the profession to serve, really. I think 10 minutes, okay. So thinking about, if we were a business, an organisation, we're not going to go and put products on the market that people don't want. So at the moment, I think what's being offered to the community is not necessarily meeting their needs. And maybe that's why they're not taking up the services. I've referred people to IAPT services because I still do events, do bits in the community, and I'll say, right, there's the details for your IAPT service. Give them a ring, self-refer, see a GP. So my family refer people. They like a sign. My family receives calls. My mum receives calls from the community, and she signposts people to IAPT services because she wants to spend time with me. There is something here, and I send people to IAPT services. They go in, and the feedback that I get back is quite negative. So I'm going, hang on. So you're trying to access a service, and the care you're receiving isn't brilliant, and then you're coming back. So actually, we need to sort that out. What's the offer that we're making the communities? So in order to offer the community something, actually we need to understand their needs. And because maybe what we haven't done is when the initial guide came out 10 years ago, I just think some people understood what it was trying to say, and some people just don't get inclusion and they don't understand it. So they were never able to implement that guide. It's that just sit with the communities and find out what they need and work something up with them. A bit of time at the beginning, but then hopefully once things get rolling, it'll be a lot easier, and just work a bit more collaboratively. So it's not about what we think. Think about our BABCP workshops that we're doing, is that we're saying don't make assumptions about people, and that, be aware of your biases, because those are coming into play all the time. We think they need something and that's not what they need. And then not assuming that everyone needs that once you have something worked up. Because in terms of the data, there's not a lot of research that's been done, but in terms of this narrative that BME people only want BME therapists, actually it's not really evidence-based as such. I think the younger generation probably prefer not to, and I think maybe the older generation, I think about people like my mum and her friends, might prefer because of the language barrier. I don't know. but we can't make assumptions like that and statements like that without really backing it up with any research and evidence. So that's sort of how I felt when I had to do this. I just realised a lot of pressure on us to deliver this guide and then do something with it. And trying to set up, we was working like New Year's Day, we had, last year New Year's Day, we had an event then to involve service users, but usually I was waking up in the middle of the night in a panic going, I've not got the Jewish community, I've not got this community, I've not got that community. So it was really sort of anxiety provoking for me, so that's the best way I can explain what was happening to me during the process of developing the guide. And then like pulling over, like going down to Brighton for Christmas and pulling on to the M1 and then trying to arrange feedback sessions. So this is like trying to, I just took a picture, I was like, of all the places to event, plan something. I was in a service station somewhere on the M1. So we did one at the Kashmir Youth Project in Rochdale, and that was New Year's Eve, sorry, not New Year's Day. And I think some people are here from that feedback session today, and we're going to be hearing a bit more from Javed as well. And then we did a Skype session, so thinking about the Asian community or the South Asian community, they're not a homogenous group. So I'd just like to thank Therapies and Saiqa Mind. I've never met them in person, but they're really supportive and get behind the work that we do. And they help recruit people for the Skype session. And then we did sessions 3 and 4 in Sheffield. And that one there was just, I haven't really found words for how it made me feel, but I walked into the waiting room, just black men, that was it. And I was like, hang on, you're meant to be hard to reach here. I hadn't planned it that way, that's just how it happened. And Shamaki came with 4. And the day before, I didn't know if I'd have enough people. I think it was a day or 2 before to run that session. So it was quite an emotional one for me. So I think, hopefully we've captured voices of people that we don't see and we don't hear from. So Michelle did one around asylum seekers and refugees with the Refugee Council, with community organisations that are working with asylum seekers and refugees and interpreters, and there's guidance and they haven't got time. And later on in the year, I think Michelle might be doing something around that, maybe in the Midlands. So we're trying to capture different parts of the country. Amarja did one around the Polish community, and I wanted just to bring this in because the Polish community is probably one of the largest sort of minority communities in the country, but we don't see that maybe because of the colour of their skin. And again, being white isn't a homogenous group, and we just need to be mindful of that. And it's the most spoken language in England, and I didn't know this because we don't talk about it enough. So these are her slides that I'm using, so I just want to acknowledge that. So what she found was that actually they had a certain, in Poland for example, care's a bit more long-standing, so when they come here and it's shorter sessions, I think they struggle with that. And then not having access to translate materials is really difficult for them. So they have their expectations based on their Poland, for example, but also that actually just being signposted to our service didn't work for them. They wanted something maybe online, to be able to book appointments online, but available in their language. So again, it comes back to developing resources to match people's needs. And then like the waiting list bit, so I don't want to say that, maybe Abdi later on, do you want to say something around that? I think it would be helpful. That's quite a common theme that keeps coming up in all communities. And just being a bit more flexible with cancellations and DNAs with people. Sometimes people have other things going on in their lives, family commitments, I think about my family, my weekends are typically to-ing and fro-ing between Rochdale and Sheffield, so it's not as if weekends are always my time, actually it's my time to come back to my family and do my family stuff. So there are cultural maybe expectations that people have as well. So churches and religious organisations are not perceived by Polish as the places to go to discuss psychological problems, as they would not like to see the outreach work in church. So maybe there's something around working with them to build their confidence. So in terms of, just like to thank Sheffield Health and Social Capital's BAME staff network group to help in helping recruiting the people, and Shamaki, who's from the Man Somali Community Mental Health organisation in Sheffield, and for coming to the London event as well with Abdi, so thank you for coming to Manchester as well. And so what have I learned? That actually I don't really know much. I just try and advocate that we need to do more. We've got a lot to learn by working with all diverse communities, not just I talk about BAME, but currently do some stuff with men, exactly the same sort of issues. We're a female-dominated profession, they're not represented in the profession, and so why would their views be represented? We need to be thinking about making spaces for them, and actually we need to develop a bit more psychological sort of flexibility in our services, and this is where the role of the commissions is important to enable IAPT services to do that. Important to collaborate with voluntary sector organisations, and one of the most important things I learned through my sessions that I did was that people wanted to help, and they said, why are you not using us? I've got experience, I want to do more. It's the thing that sometimes gets me out of bed, so why aren't you creating spaces for us to come and share ideas and work with you, or actually encourage us to enter the profession? So maybe there's a role that we've got in terms of mentoring people from within the community even come into the psychology profession. The important thing is, on the wider sort of basis, that learning about communities will challenge our unconscious biases. It's the best way. Unconscious bias training there's no real evidence that it's ever effective as such. So the best way to do it is just go and learn about people yourselves and connect with people, look at your own lives, do your friends from diverse communities, because then when you're sitting in those seats where you're making decisions about communities, they'll be in your mind. But if you're not hanging out with them, you're not getting to know people, they probably won't be in your mind. And the important thing was they were happy with the guide actually. That what's not to like was one comment, and I think they felt that finally this was again moving away from stigma, so it was long overdue. So yeah, that's just Men Are Not Hard to Reach, currently doing stuff with Neville Southall's followers on Twitter. So it's not a space for therapists, it's a space for his followers, and we just talk about lots of different conversations, and I think that's been going on for about 6 months now. Yeah, 6 months. And I talked to them offline as well, and exactly the same sort of issues, the structural issues. It's not just stigma. I think we're complicit in perpetuating the myth that stigma. Actually, we've got a role here. We need to own that actually. Same issues there. And last night we were online and I said I would mention them and make sure we're thinking about them too. Okay, so why is it important for us to lose sleep over? Ultimately, it's about saving lives. I've heard, do you know when we launched the guide in London, that week I went to a funeral in Rochdale of a young boy, and I still remember his mum crying. I know the family, and the people that I know who have passed away unfortunately have been known to services, so it's not as if people weren't seeking help. And I haven't looked into it because I don't have time, but if I wanted to I could, because I've got links into the community. I don't want to do it that way, but they were known to services. So we need to think about how can we as individuals first and foremost contribute to this, because when you see 1 or 2 people doing the work, it's easy to let them run with it, and I think that's what's happened with us. It's a handful of people doing it. No, it's not. It's all of our responsibility, and we have to find that voice to say, actually, can you get on board with it, what we're doing collectively? And then if you have psychological safety in your organisations, you can do that, and hopefully what we're trying to do through the Equality SIG is actually create psychological safety in the BABCP as well, and we've got to move towards accountability. There's absolutely no accountability. They don't even collect the data on rates, ethnicity in terms of suicide rates. It's ridiculous. All this publicity and all this money that's going in, we can't do anything as simple as collecting ethnicity. And nobody's, we need to change that around. That's a separate conversation we're having, but I think accountability, we're getting towards that now. So there's 2 guides on the BABCP website. The executive summary, because NHS England thought, that's this one here. That will help you, they thought. Read the larger guide, but please do use the guide and dip in and out of it. And just like to thank Andrew, Beck and Becky, Project Lee. She was involved in that national IAPT team at that time, and Andrew's the president-elect of the BABCP, so in July he'll take up his role as president. And if you are a BABCP member, then please just do join our Equality and Culture Special Interest Group by emailing that email, and then it gets stored in the BABCP. And we've got our annual conference in July. I can't remember the exact dates, I think middle or end of July. I don't know why I'm looking at Caroline's at the back, but is it in July? Yeah. Is it, Peter? Yeah. Yeah. But you don't have to be a member, do you, to attend? So I'd really recommend it. Last year, but there wasn't that many BME people there. I probably counted a handful. It was very obvious when I was looking around, because I run around the conferences, I'm quite comfortable now, and I was just like, you're not being represented. And I was saying to people that your service isn't the profession, that if you're not having a good time in your service, does it mean that you leave the profession or it's BABCP's fault? It's not at all. Come to a place like that, it really does energise people.